Act as though you are already the one they cannot live without. Not pretending, not forcing, not trying to convince the world, but quietly knowing it in the deepest part of your being. Because the truth is this: people do not respond to your words as much as they respond to your inner assumption. They do not fall in love with what you say. They fall in love with what you are certain of inside yourself. When you move through life carrying the feeling that you are deeply wanted, cherished, and adored, the world begins to rearrange itself to mirror that inner conviction. Most people make the same mistake. They wait for signs. They watch for messages. They analyze every word, every silence, every delay. They believe love must come first from the outside before they can feel secure within. But this reverses the law of life. The outer world is not the cause. It is the echo. It is not the painter. It is the canvas. The cause is always the inner state you dwell in repeatedly, especially when no one is watching, especially when you are alone with your thoughts. To act as though they will love you badly means to live from the end of being loved, not to chase love. It means to carry yourself with the calm certainty of someone who knows they are chosen. Notice how a person who feels loved does not beg for attention. They do not fear being replaced. They do not overthink simple moments. They move with quiet confidence, with ease, with a natural warmth. They smile without effort. They speak without anxiety. Their presence feels grounded because they are not searching for proof. They already feel the proof within. When you truly assume you are loved deeply, your behavior changes automatically. You stop checking your phone every minute. You stop wondering if you said the right thing. You stop replaying conversations in your mind. Instead, you begin to think from the perspective of someone who is already secure. You think thoughts like, of course they miss me. Of course they think about me. Of course they value me. And these thoughts are not forced affirmations. They become natural because you dwell in that identity consistently. Understand this clearly. The world does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are being. Wanting implies lack. Hoping implies uncertainty. But being implies possession. When you act as though you are deeply loved, you are no longer asking life to give you something. You are expressing the state of already having it. And life always reflects the state you consistently occupy. Think about how actors step into a role. They do not constantly remind themselves that they are pretending. They immerse themselves so fully that they begin to think, move, and react as the character would. For that time, they are not acting, they are being. This is exactly how you must approach your inner world. You must step into the role of the loved one so completely that it feels natural, normal, and unquestioned. This does not mean forcing fake smiles or pretending to others. It is not about performance for the outside world. It is about a private inner shift. It is about changing the conversations you have within yourself. It is about the silent assumptions you carry when you lie awake at night, when you walk alone, when you imagine future moments. Those unseen inner moments are what shape your outer experiences. If you want to be loved intensely, you must stop rehearsing rejection in your mind. Many people unknowingly do this every day. They imagine being ignored. They anticipate disappointment. They mentally replay past hurts. They think thoughts like, what if they lose interest? Or what if they leave? These inner images become instructions to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious, being faithful and obedient, produces circumstances that match those instructions. But when you reverse this pattern, everything changes. When you begin to imagine being deeply desired, appreciated, and chosen, your subconscious accepts that as reality. It does not judge whether it is true or false. It simply expresses it. Slowly but surely, your external world begins to reflect that inner conviction. Acting as though you are loved also changes your energy in subtle ways. You become more relaxed, you listen more fully, you express yourself more freely. You stop trying to control outcomes because you no longer feel threatened by them. You know that love is not something fragile that can vanish at any moment. You feel it as something stable, something rooted in your identity. This state of inner certainty is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who feel secure within themselves, not because of manipulation, but because confidence communicates safety. When you feel loved, you radiate warmth instead of tension. You radiate openness instead of fear, and others respond to that energy instinctively. Another important truth is this: you must stop measuring your worth based on temporary circumstances. One unanswered message, one misunderstanding does not define your value. If you allow small events to shake your inner state, you are giving power to the outer world. But when you remain steady in the assumption that you are loved, you maintain control over your inner environment, and that stability shapes long-term outcomes. To live from this state, you must practice mental discipline, not harsh control, but gentle redirection. Whenever you notice yourself slipping into doubt, gently return to the feeling of being loved. You do not need to fight negative thoughts. Simply replace them. Imagine scenes that imply deep affection. Hear loving words in your mind. Feel the emotional comfort of being valued. Do this repeatedly until it becomes your natural mental habit. It is also essential to understand that acting as though you are loved is not about one specific person alone. It is about embodying the identity of being lovable. When you become the person who naturally feels loved, your entire world responds differently. Relationships improve. Conversations become lighter. Opportunities appear. Even strangers treat you with greater kindness because you are projecting a state of inner worth. There is a profound difference between seeking love and expressing love. When you feel empty, you try to take love from others. When you feel full, you naturally give warmth, attention, and appreciation. And paradoxically, the more you give from fullness, the more you receive in return. This is because people mirror the emotional state you bring into interactions. To truly act as though they will love you badly, you must also release the habit of emotional dependence. Dependence creates pressure. It silently communicates fear of loss. But when you feel complete within yourself, you allow love to flow freely without clinging. You enjoy connection without anxiety. You trust the stability of your inner state more than the uncertainty of external conditions. Remember, the subconscious mind responds most powerfully to feelings, not words alone. You can repeat statements all day, but if they are not accompanied by emotion, they remain superficial. The key is to generate the feeling of being loved. Feel the comfort of knowing someone thinks about you with warmth. Feel the ease of being appreciated. Feel the quiet happiness of knowing you matter deeply. These feelings impress the subconscious far more strongly than any verbal affirmation. Consistency is the secret. A single moment of confidence will not change your life, but repeated inner conviction will. Just as water slowly shapes stone through steady flow, your consistent assumptions reshape your reality over time. Each day you remain in the state of being loved, you strengthen that identity within your mind. You may not see immediate changes, and that is where many people give up. They return to doubt because they expect instant proof. But true transformation happens beneath the surface first. Just like a seed grows roots before it breaks through the soil. Your inner assumptions must take root before they appear in the outer world. Patience is not waiting in uncertainty. It is waiting with confidence. As you continue to dwell in this state, you will notice subtle shifts. Your reactions become calmer. You stop overanalyzing. You begin to enjoy the present moment more. These internal changes are signs that you are stabilizing in the identity of being loved. And once that identity becomes natural, the external confirmation follows inevitably. Acting as though you are loved deeply is ultimately an act of self-respect. It means choosing to see yourself as worthy regardless of circumstances. It means refusing to let temporary events define your value. It means understanding that the love you seek must first be felt within. When you master this inner shift, you no longer chase affection. You become the person to whom affection flows naturally. You no longer wonder if you are enough. You know it. And this knowing transforms everything, not through force, but through quiet certainty. So walk through your life today with the calm assurance that you are already deeply loved. Think from that place. Feel from that place. Imagine from that place. Let every thought and reaction arise from that identity. Because the moment you truly accept that state within yourself, the e-world has no choice but to reflect it back to you in ways that feel natural, effortless, and unmistakably real. And as you continue to live from this inner knowing, you will begin to notice how different your inner conversations become. Instead of silently asking, "Do they care about me?" you will find yourself naturally thinking, "They appreciate me more than they even say." Instead of imagining distance, you will begin to imagine closeness. Instead of expecting indifference, you will quietly expect warmth. These subtle shifts in thought may seem small, but they are powerful because your inner dialogue is the script from which your outer experiences are performed. Most people do not realize how much of their suffering comes from the stories they repeat within themselves. They replay past disappointments again and again, as though rehearsing a painful scene. They relive moments of rejection, not understanding that every time they do so, they reinforce the identity of being unwanted. But when you decide to act as though you are deeply loved, you gently stop feeding those old stories. You no longer give attention to memories that contradict your desired state. You begin to select new inner images deliberately, images that reflect affection, respect, and emotional closeness. This shift does not require effortful struggle. It requires awareness. The moment you notice yourself drifting into thoughts of doubt, you simply pause and redirect your mind. You replace the thought with a scene that implies love. You imagine hearing someone say your name with warmth. You imagine a message filled with genuine appreciation. You imagine being remembered, missed, and valued. As you repeat this process, your mind begins to accept these images as normal rather than imaginary. When this state becomes familiar, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to control other people's behavior. You no longer feel the urge to analyze every detail of their actions. You allow them to express themselves freely because you are not dependent on their external behavior to feel secure. Your security comes from your inner assumption, not from their temporary moods or circumstances. And this freedom transforms your relationships. When you are not operating from fear, you communicate more authentically. You listen without defensiveness. You express your thoughts without hesitation. You allow space without anxiety. And this creates an atmosphere where love can grow naturally, without pressure or tension. It is important to understand that acting as though you are loved does not mean ignoring reality. It means redefining reality from the inside out. You are not denying what you see. You are choosing to focus on the deeper cause behind what you see. You recognize that circumstances are not permanent facts, but reflections of past assumptions. And just as they were shaped by previous states, they can be reshaped by new ones. You may sometimes notice old doubts trying to return, especially if they have been repeated for a long time. They may appear as fleeting thoughts like, "What if it doesn't work?" or "What if they change?" When this happens, do not fight those thoughts with frustration. Simply acknowledge them and return to your chosen state. Think of it as gently steering a boat back toward its destination whenever it drifts slightly off course. With time, this becomes easier. Your mind begins to default to the feeling of being loved rather than the fear of losing love. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly because the state becomes your natural baseline. Just as a person who has always felt secure does not question their worth daily, you too will reach a point where feeling loved becomes effortless. Another powerful aspect of this practice is how it changes your perception of others. When you assume you are loved, you naturally begin to see others as more kind, more understanding, and more responsive. This is because your perception is influenced by your inner state. You begin to interpret their actions through the lens of appreciation rather than doubt. A simple message feels warm instead of distant. A quiet moment feels peaceful instead of threatening. This shift in perception often leads to a remarkable change in how others actually behave toward you. Because when you expect warmth, you respond with warmth. When you expect appreciation, you express appreciation. And this creates a cycle of positive interaction that strengthens emotional connection. Living in this state also frees you from comparison. You no longer measure yourself against others or worry about being replaced. You understand that love is not a competition. It is not limited or scarce. It flows naturally toward those who feel worthy of receiving it. And when you embody the identity of being deeply loved, you no longer see others as threats. You see them simply as individuals living their own experiences. This sense of inner security allows you to remain calm, even during uncertain moments. If communication slows, you do not panic. If someone seems distracted, you do not assume rejection. You remain grounded in your inner knowing. You trust that your state is stronger than temporary circumstances. And this calmness itself is powerful. It sends a silent message of confidence. It communicates that you value yourself and your emotional stability. People are naturally drawn to this steadiness because it creates a sense of emotional safety around you. As you deepen this practice, you may also notice changes in how you treat yourself. You become more compassionate toward your own emotions. You stop criticizing yourself harshly. You speak to yourself with the same kindness you wish to receive from others. And this self-kindness strengthens your inner feeling of worthiness, making the state of being loved even more stable. You begin to understand that being loved deeply is not something that happens to you randomly. It is something that emerges naturally when you align your inner world with the feeling of love. It is not about forcing someone to care. It is about becoming the version of yourself who naturally attracts care through the energy of self-assurance. In quiet moments, you will feel a growing sense of peace. You will feel less urgency, less emotional turbulence. You will feel a steady warmth within, like a quiet flame that does not flicker with every external breeze. This inner peace is one of the clearest signs that you are truly living from the state of being loved. And as this state becomes more permanent, your entire life begins to reflect it, not only in romantic connections, but in friendships, family relationships, and even professional interactions. People respond more positively, opportunities open more smoothly, conversations become more harmonious. All because your inner assumption has shifted from doubt to certainty, from lack to fullness, from seeking love to embodying it. So continue to move through your days with this quiet conviction. Continue to choose thoughts that reflect deep appreciation. Continue to imagine scenes that imply strong emotional connection. Continue to feel the comfort of being valued, even when no external proof is immediately visible. Because each moment you remain faithful to this inner state, you are shaping a reality that must eventually mirror the love you consistently hold within yourself. And the more you persist in this inner loyalty to your chosen state, the more you will realize how much of life is shaped not by effort, but by identity. Identity is the silent force behind every reaction, every expectation, every emotional response. When you identify as someone who is deeply loved, your entire inner world reorganizes itself around that truth. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly. You begin to think, feel, and respond automatically from that place. You will notice that your imagination starts working in your favor instead of against you. Where you once pictured distance, you now naturally picture closeness. Where you once anticipated disappointment, you now expect pleasant surprises. Your mind begins to generate scenes of connection without you forcing it. You might catch yourself daydreaming about laughter, meaningful conversations, shared moments of warmth. These inner images are not random. They are reflections of the state you are dwelling in. This is how transformation quietly unfolds. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not require struggle or visible effort. It happens through repetition of feeling. Every time you choose to feel loved instead of doubtful, you strengthen a new mental pathway. And over time, this pathway becomes the easiest and most natural route for your thoughts to follow. You may also begin to notice a change in how time feels. When you are in a state of longing, time feels slow and heavy. You wait anxiously. You count minutes. You feel restless. But when you are living from the feeling of already being loved, time feels lighter. You are present. You enjoy moments as they are. You are not rushing toward future proof because you already feel secure in the present. This shift in how you experience time is important because it reflects a deeper change in consciousness. You are no longer living in anticipation of something missing. You are living in appreciation of something already felt within. And this appreciation naturally generates calmness. As calmness grows, you become less reactive to small external changes. You do not interpret silence as rejection. You do not interpret busyness as disinterest. You give others the freedom to exist without projecting fear onto their actions. This emotional stability strengthens relationships because it removes unnecessary tension. People feel this stability even if you never speak about it. They sense that you are not demanding reassurance, not seeking constant validation. They feel relaxed around you because your presence carries no hidden pressure. And in that relaxed atmosphere, genuine affection flows more naturally. You also begin to trust your own inner world more deeply. Instead of seeking confirmation from outside, you start valuing your internal certainty. You realize that your imagination is not merely fantasy, it is a creative power that shapes experience. When you use it consciously, it becomes a tool for emotional alignment rather than a source of worry. There will still be moments when old habits try to surface. You might briefly feel the urge to check for signs or to analyze situations, but these moments become shorter and less intense as your new state strengthens. You recover quickly because your mind now recognizes the feeling of being loved as home. In fact, you may start to feel uncomfortable when you slip into doubt, not because of fear, but because it simply no longer feels natural. Just as someone who is used to peace feels disturbed by chaos, you will feel out of alignment when you entertain thoughts of insecurity. This discomfort gently guides you back to your chosen state. Another subtle shift you may notice is how you respond to uncertainty. Instead of reacting with anxiety, you respond with quiet confidence. You assume positive outcomes without forcing them. You trust that what is meant to reflect your inner state will unfold in its own perfect timing. This trust reduces the urge to control situations. You no longer feel the need to manipulate conversations, to predict every outcome, or to plan every interaction. You allow life to move with natural rhythm because you know that your inner assumption is already directing the flow beneath the surface. As this trust deepens, your emotional energy becomes lighter. You laugh more easily, you speak more freely, you express appreciation more openly. You enjoy interactions without the hidden tension of seeking approval. And this natural ease makes your presence more inviting. You also become more aware of how powerful attention truly is. Whatever you consistently focus on grows stronger in your experience. When you focus on warmth, you notice more warmth. When you focus on appreciation, you receive more appreciation. Your awareness begins to filter reality according to your inner state. This means you no longer waste attention on negative possibilities. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios. You stop feeding thoughts that contradict your chosen identity. Instead, you invest your attention in thoughts that reinforce emotional security. Over time, this disciplined use of attention creates a stable emotional environment within you. It becomes easier to remain calm regardless of external fluctuations. Your inner world feels steady, like a quiet foundation that does not shift with every circumstance. And from this foundation, your interactions become more authentic. You no longer hide your true thoughts out of fear. You no longer overcompensate to gain approval. You communicate from a place of self-respect, which naturally invites respect from others. This authenticity also deepens emotional connections. When you are not guarded by insecurity, you allow genuine vulnerability. You share your feelings honestly, without fearing rejection. And this openness encourages others to respond with sincerity. As you continue to embody this state, you may even notice that your physical presence changes. Your posture becomes more relaxed. Your voice becomes calmer. Your facial expressions reflect inner peace. These subtle physical signals communicate confidence and warmth without you trying. All of this happens not because you are forcing yourself to act differently, but because your inner identity has shifted. Behavior always follows belief. When you truly believe you are loved, your actions naturally align with that belief. You begin to understand that love, in its deepest sense, is not something you chase or earn. It is something you align with. It is a state of being that you allow yourself to feel, regardless of circumstances. And once you consistently occupy that state, it becomes reflected in the world around you through countless small and meaningful ways. And as you continue to remain faithful to this inner state, you will start to see how deeply your assumptions shape even the smallest details of your daily experiences. You will notice how conversations begin to feel warmer without you trying to make them so. You will notice how people respond to you with more openness, more kindness, more attentiveness. These changes may seem subtle at first, almost easy to overlook, but they are powerful signs that your inner shift is being mirrored outwardly. You will also begin to understand that love is not something that comes and goes randomly. It follows patterns, and those patterns are formed in the unseen world of thought and feeling. When you consistently dwell in the feeling of being deeply loved, you create a stable emotional frequency that others naturally tune into. They may not consciously know why they feel drawn to you, but they respond to the calm assurance you radiate. This inner assurance removes the urgency that once surrounded you. Our desire for affection. You no longer feel the need to rush outcomes or force clarity. You become comfortable with allowing things to unfold naturally, because you trust that your inner state is already shaping the direction of events. This patience is not passive. It is a quiet confidence that what you feel within is more real than temporary external appearances. As you grow more familiar with this state, you will notice how your thoughts about yourself begin to transform. Where you once questioned your worth, you now naturally affirm it. You begin to see yourself as someone who deserves respect, attention, and emotional care. This self-perception influences how others treat you, because people tend to reflect the way you internally define yourself. You may also find that you stop seeking constant reassurance from others. You no longer feel the urge to ask for proof of their feelings, because you already feel secure within. This inner independence makes your connections healthier and more balanced. You interact out of genuine interest and affection rather than emotional neediness. Another shift that occurs is in how you interpret silence or distance. Instead of seeing them as signs of rejection, you begin to view them as neutral moments within a larger context of connection. You remain calm because your inner state does not depend on constant external stimulation. This calmness prevents misunderstandings and allows relationships to breathe naturally. You will also begin to notice that your emotional reactions become slower and more thoughtful. Instead of reacting impulsively to small triggers, you pause and respond from your chosen state. This ability to remain centered, even in uncertain moments, strengthens your emotional stability and makes your presence more reassuring to others. As your inner world stabilizes, you will likely experience a growing sense of self-exploitation. Rust. You begin to rely more on your own perception of reality rather than external validation. You understand that your feelings of being loved are not dependent on immediate circumstances, but on the deeper identity you have chosen to embody. This self-trust also reduces the fear of loss. You no longer worry constantly about what might go wrong because you recognize that your inner state is the true source of your experiences. Even if situations change, you know that you can always return to the feeling of being loved, and from that state, new positive experiences will emerge. You may also notice that your focus shifts away from trying to impress others. Instead, you naturally express your true personality without hesitation. You share your thoughts more freely. You laugh more openly. You allow yourself to be seen without fear of judgment. This authenticity makes your connections feel more genuine and meaningful. At the same time, you begin to appreciate how powerful consistency truly is. It is not one moment of confidence that transforms your life, but the steady repetition of feeling loved day after day. Each time you choose to remain in this state despite external fluctuations, you strengthen its influence over your reality. You might also observe how your imagination becomes more vivid and supportive. It starts generating positive expectations automatically. You find yourself anticipating warm interactions, meaningful conversations, and pleasant surprises. This anticipation itself influences your behavior, making you more relaxed and receptive. As this process continues, you will notice that you become less affected by temporary setbacks. If something does not go as expected, you do not immediately assume the worst. You remain grounded in your inner certainty and allow circumstances to shift naturally over time. This resilience protects your emotional well-being and prevents you from falling back into old patterns of doubt. You may also find that your overall mood becomes more stable. You feel less emotional turbulence and more steady contentment. This stability allows you to enjoy life beyond the narrow focus of seeking validation. You become more present in everyday moments, appreciating small experiences without overthinking them. This presence enhances your interactions with others because you are fully engaged rather than mentally preoccupied with worries. People feel valued when they sense your genuine attention, and this strengthens emotional bonds naturally. You will also begin to see that when you truly feel loved within, you become more generous in your own expressions of care. You listen more patiently, you offer encouragement more freely, you show appreciation more openly. And this generosity creates a positive cycle where affection flows in both directions. Over time, this state becomes so natural that you no longer think of it as a practice. It becomes simply the way you experience yourself in the world. Feeling loved becomes your default perspective, shaping your expectations, your reactions, and your interactions. Without conscious effort, and as this identity solidifies, you continue to move through your life with a quiet sense of assurance, carrying within you the steady awareness that your inner state is the true foundation upon which all your experiences of connection, affection, and emotional closeness are built. And as this awareness deepens within you, you begin to realize that the state of being loved is not something fragile that can be taken away by circumstances. It is not dependent on a single moment, a single conversation, or a single person's mood. It is something much more stable, something rooted in your perception of yourself. Once you truly accept yourself as someone who is deeply, yea, valued, that perception becomes a quiet foundation. Beneath all your experiences, you will notice that when challenges arise, they no longer shake you as they once did. Instead of immediately assuming the worst, you remain anchored in your inner certainty. You remind yourself, not through forced words but through feeling, that your worth and your ability to be loved are constant. This calm response allows situations to resolve more smoothly because you are not reacting from fear. Your thoughts also begin to carry a different tone. They become softer, more supportive, more encouraging. You stop criticizing yourself for small mistakes. You stop replaying moments of awkwardness or insecurity. Instead, you treat yourself with patience and understanding. This inner kindness strengthens your emotional stability and makes it easier to remain in the state of feeling loved. As you continue, you may also observe how your expectations about the future begin to shift. You naturally anticipate positive developments rather than potential disappointments. You imagine future interactions filled with warmth, mutual respect, and genuine affection. These expectations create a sense of quiet optimism that influences your behavior in subtle ways. This optimism is not blind or unrealistic. It is grounded in the understanding that your inner state shapes your experiences. You recognize that by maintaining the feeling of being loved, you are continuously planting seeds that will eventually grow into visible outcomes. You may also find that your patience increases. You no longer feel the need for immediate confirmation because you trust the process of inner alignment. You understand that just as a plant requires time to grow after being planted, your inner assumptions require time to express themselves fully in the outer world. This patience removes the tension that often disrupts relationships. You allow others to express themselves naturally without pressuring them for reassurance. This freedom creates a more relaxed atmosphere where genuine feelings can emerge without resistance. You will also notice how your communication becomes clearer and more confident. You speak your thoughts without hesitation because you no longer fear rejection. You express your needs calmly because you believe they deserve to be heard. This confidence invites respect and strengthens emotional connections. Another change that often occurs is in how you perceive others' behavior. When you feel secure within, you tend to interpret actions more positively. A delayed response is seen as busyness rather than disinterest. A quiet moment is seen as peaceful rather than distant. This positive interpretation prevents unnecessary misunderstandings and supports harmony in relationships. As this perspective becomes natural, you may also find that you become less focused on external approval. You still appreciate appreciation, but you do not depend on it to feel complete. Your sense of worth comes from within, and this independence makes your interactions healthier and more balanced. You may begin to feel a deeper sense of gratitude as well. Not forced gratitude, but a quiet appreciation for the connections you have and the warmth you experience. This appreciation further strengthens your inner state because gratitude naturally amplifies feelings of abundance. Over time, you will notice how your emotional energy becomes more stable and consistent. You experience fewer extremes of anxiety or doubt. Instead, you feel a steady calmness that supports your overall well-being. This emotional steadiness makes it easier for others to feel comfortable and secure around you. You may also observe that you become more present in your daily life instead of constantly thinking about future outcomes or past disappointments. You focus on the moment in front of you. You enjoy conversations without overanalyzing them. You appreciate small gestures without questioning their meaning. This presence enhances your relationships because it allows you to engage fully with others. People feel valued when they sense your genuine attention, and this deepens emotional bonds naturally. As your inner state continues to strengthen, you will also notice that your imagination becomes a source of inspiration rather than worry. You begin to use it intentionally to create images that reflect emotional closeness and mutual appreciation. These images reinforce your chosen identity and help maintain your emotional alignment. You may also feel a growing sense of self-respect. You recognize your own value and treat yourself accordingly. You set healthy boundaries without guilt. You prioritize your well-being without fear of losing others. This self-respect naturally attracts respect from those around you. With this comes a quiet confidence that does not need to be announced or proven. It is simply felt in your presence, in the way you carry yourself, in the calmness of your voice, in the steadiness of your reactions. This confidence communicates that you are comfortable with yourself and secure in your identity. As you continue living from this state, you begin to see that love is not something you chase or struggle to maintain. It flows naturally when you remain aligned with the feeling of being worthy, appreciated, and emotionally secure within yourself. And as you remain steady in this inner alignment, you begin to notice something even deeper. Your reactions to life start to slow down. Where you once reacted instantly with worry, now there is a pause, a calm space between what happens outside and how you feel inside. In that pause, you remember who you are choosing to be. You remember that you are someone who is deeply loved, someone who does not need to chase reassurance, because reassurance already lives within. This pause becomes powerful because it allows you to respond consciously rather than react automatically. Instead of being pulled into old patterns of doubt, you gently return to the feeling of certainty. And each time you do this, you strengthen your ability to remain centered regardless of what is happening around you. You will also begin to notice how your emotional resilience grows. Situations that once felt overwhelming now seem manageable. Small misunderstandings no longer spiral into anxious thoughts. You maintain a sense of balance because your inner identity is no longer fragile. It does not collapse at the first sign of uncertainty. It remains stable, like a quiet anchor holding you steady. As this stability deepens, your sense of personal power becomes clearer. You realize that you are not at the mercy of circumstances or other people's moods. You understand that while you cannot control everything outside you, you always have the ability to choose your inner state. This realization brings a quiet strength that changes how you move through life. You may also notice that you begin to carry yourself differently without trying. Your body language becomes more relaxed. Your shoulders are no longer tense. Your movements feel natural rather than guarded. Even your breathing becomes slower and calmer. These physical changes reflect the emotional ease you are cultivating within. People respond to this ease instinctively. They feel comfortable around you because your presence does not carry hidden anxiety. You are not silently seeking approval or fearing rejection, and this absence of tension creates an atmosphere of calm connection. You will also find that your expectations about relationships become healthier. You no longer expect perfection or constant attention. Instead, you expect mutual respect, genuine care, and emotional consistency. This realistic yet positive expectation allows you to appreciate what is present rather than focusing on what might be missing. At the same time, you begin to understand that love is expressed in many subtle ways. It is not always loud or dramatic. Often it appears in small gestures, quiet support, thoughtful words, and consistent presence. Because you feel loved within, you become more aware of these subtle expressions and appreciate them deeply. This awareness strengthens your connections because you respond with gratitude rather than doubt. You acknowledge warmth when it appears instead of questioning its sincerity. This positive reinforcement encourages more openness and affection in your relationships. You may also notice that your inner dialogue becomes more peaceful. Instead of constant mental noise, there is a steady sense of reassurance. Your thoughts become supportive companions rather than critics. You speak to yourself with the same kindness you would offer to someone you care about deeply. This inner harmony makes it easier to maintain emotional balance during challenging moments. Even when difficulties arise, you do not lose your sense of worth. You remind yourself that temporary situations do not define your identity. As this practice continues, you will also experience a growing sense of emotional independence. This does not mean isolation or detachment. It means that your happiness is no longer entirely dependent on external validation. You enjoy connections deeply, but you do not rely on them to feel complete. This independence actually strengthens your relationships because it removes pressure. Others feel free to express themselves without feeling responsible for maintaining your emotional stability. This freedom creates a healthier dynamic where affection flows naturally. You may also begin to notice how your creativity increases. When your mind is not occupied with worry, it has more space to imagine positive possibilities. You find yourself thinking more optimistically about your future, envisioning experiences filled with joy, connection, and personal fulfillment. These positive visions inspire your actions. You begin to take steps that align with your self-worth. You make choices that reflect your belief in being valued. You invest your time and energy in relationships and activities that support your emotional well-being. As you continue to live from this state, your perception of yourself becomes increasingly stable. You no longer see your worth as something that fluctuates based on others' reactions. Instead, you recognize it as an inherent quality that remains constant regardless of circumstances. This recognition creates a quiet confidence that influences every area of your life. You approach conversations with clarity. You handle conflicts with calmness. You navigate uncertainty with patience, all because your inner foundation is rooted in the feeling of being deeply loved. And gradually, this inner foundation becomes so natural that you stop thinking of it as something you are practicing. It simply becomes the way you exist, the lens through which you experience the world, the quiet certainty that shapes your thoughts, your emotions, and the energy you bring into every interaction. So carry this truth with you wherever you go. You do not attract love by chasing it, pleading for it, or doubting your worth. You attract it by becoming the person who already feels chosen within. The moment you decide to live from the deep certainty that you are valued, desired, and unforgettable, your world begins to rearrange itself to match that inner decision. Let your thoughts speak from confidence, let your imagination reflect affection, and let your heart rest in the quiet knowing that you are not waiting to be loved. You are becoming the very state that compels love to find you, stay with you, and grow stronger around you.